Switch Axe is by far the weapon I've used and enjoyed the most in Sunbreak. Its high damage output as well as its versatility and the ability to counter monsters' attacks make it an incredibly fun and rewarding weapon to use. As such, after 200 hunts with this weapon alone in Sunbreak, here's my advanced guide for the Switch Axe. So let's start off with the most important and significant addition to the Switch Axe in Sunbreak, which is the counter. By pressing the left trigger as well as the circle button on PlayStation, you are able to perform the elemental burst counter. When you first press these two buttons, you will enter this sort of defensive stance until your sword meter runs out, at which point you'll have to reload the weapon or build it back up if you want to use it again. And then all you have to do is press the R2 button or the right trigger to perform the counter at the right moment. This counter is a great tool because not only does it put you into empty state, it also deals a crazy amount of damage. And it's not like you can only use the counter once, you can use it more times after you use it once and get into empty state. If you feel like you're going to get hit, you can just use it as a defensive option. As you saw right there, it has plenty of invincibility frames. You can sort of predict where the attack is going to land. And if you're somewhat close, you're always going to be able to perform the counter well. The problem comes when you're being too reckless in a fight and you don't give yourself enough time to perform the counter. Just make sure that you line up your activation counter with the right moment the monster is about to attack, and you don't enter the counter stance the moment it's about to hit you. And of course, given that the counter does a lot of file damage, it is boosted by everything else that also boosts the damage of your file attacks. So skills like attack boost and also rapid morph will increase the damage of your counter. One other thing to note is that elemental burst counter has a fast recovery time on the wire bugs. So you being able to use your wire bugs more often is just another neat part of this amazingly powerful skill. In my opinion, elemental burst counter is the best counter in the game right now, because not only does it put you into empty state, it also deals a great amount of damage. And also because it fits a much better purpose than the alternative switch skill that you have for the left trigger circle attack, which is Switch Charger. For those of you that don't know, Switch Charger replenishes your meter. But of course in Sunbreak you have many more ways to replenish your sword meter a lot faster. For example, now that I have emptied my switch gauge, one really easy and fast way to regain it back is by starting a Wild Swing combo and then go into a Morph Slash combo, where you press the right trigger twice in after using the Wild Swing. Any number of hits will do, and as you saw right there, I was able to regain a lot of switch gauge and also fill up my amp gauge really quickly. And of course, if you go into Wild Swing, you hit a bunch of times and then you perform a Heavy Slam and you get that orange icon on top right there, you're going to go into amp state even faster. So while yes, you have pretty much instant access with elemental burst counter, you can always use these attacks to get there really quickly. And of course, the old classic sword combo where you go into a double slash and perform a Wyvern's Ward Flurry is also quite viable. But I really do believe that nothing beats going into a Wild Swing combo and then using Morph Slash. Another cool tech that you can use is that following up the second hit of the Morph Slash combo, you can perform a Fade Slash, which you could already perform by doing so, but it just wasn't used as often. So let's do it once again. We're going to a Morph Slash combo and then you end it by pressing circle backwards, and there you go. You put quite a bit of distance between you and the monster. Something else to note about Elemental Burst counter is that you can actually wake up monsters with it and trigger the counter, thus entering immediately into the amped state. As you saw right there, it's all about positioning. You can't be too close or too far away from the barrel bombs. As you saw right there, because I was pretty much on top of the barrel bombs, it didn't work. But if I do it like that with just a little bit of distance between me and the barrel bombs, you can easily perform this very frequently. And again, because this puts you immediately into the amped state, you'll be able to dish out a lot more damage against the monster you've just woken up. You can easily follow that up with the standard switch axe combo, go into an elemental discharge and a finishing discharge, and follow that up with a soaring wyvern. Another surprisingly good way of building meter back up is through the use of the Rampage skill File Switch Boost. As you can see here, I have the Switcher Jewel level 3, which of course requires you to have a Rampage slot level 3, and the description of this one reads, grants special effects to files when executing morph attacks. And what it does is it essentially increases the damage of your morphing attacks, but as you can see, each time I go into a morph slash with my axe, it fills up the switch gauge just a little bit. I don't even need to be hitting the monsters you can see right here. Just by performing a morph slash, I'm able to replenish some of my switch gauge. So between this and of course the morph slash combo, as well as elemental burst counter, you have plenty of ways to maintain yourself in the amped state and with switch gauge for most of the hunt very easily. And if you need a quick fix for that, of course you can always use switch charger in your second loadout, which is what I use. Something else to note about the Rampage decoration File Switch Boost is that it is not going to deal as much damage or keep up with the DPS of using one of the anti-monster species Rampage decorations. Those increase your damage by about 5% against the monster you're hunting, so if you're a speedrunner, this is pretty much a no-go for you. You should not be using the File Switch Boost. But if you are not a speedrunner, nor do you care about achieving the fastest times possible, then I recommend using this Rampage decoration for this amazing quality of life improvement. Now, the second switch skill that the switch axe got in Sunbreak is Wire Step. You have this evasive maneuver that has invincibility frames all the way throughout up until the very end of the move. And it is essentially a way to reposition yourself all the while evading damage. As you can see, it is very fast and covers quite a wide range. So it is just an easy way to avoid attacks without having to worry about what's gonna happen. It is very reliable, but it is somewhat problematic against certain types of AoEs. One other cool thing about Wire Step is that, much like the element burst counter, it has a short recharge time on your wire bugs, so if you combine those two together, you can pretty much just chain these indefinitely as long as you have 3 wire bugs. Which isn't gonna happen all the time, but it will happen often enough so that if you really need this, you have this option to cover your ass and not get hit. Now, even though Wire Step is a very reliable move if you just want to dodge some attacks, I don't feel like it justifies replacing or removing Soaring Wyvern Blade or a move like Invincible Gambit, which has hyper armor and you can go through most monster attacks while dealing a lot of damage and applying a lot of files as well. And while Soaring Wyvern Blade, it should be, on my opinion, a staple on all of your switch axe builds, because the damage output of that thing, combined with, of course, the finishing discharge, is just insane. I mean, just look at this. That is a pretty nutty combo right there. With that being said, I don't really use Wire Step a whole lot. I'll use it every now and again on a hunt, but it's very rare that I'll ever use it. That is mostly due to because of having not only elemental burst counter, but also me having a couple of points into evade extender on a lot of my builds. Well, I just don't really see the reason to use it a whole lot. But personally, I'll prefer to use Wire Step over Invincible Gambit, because a lot of times I feel like if I can pull off an Invincible Gambit, more often than not I can just sidestep or use a Wire Step and then resume my combos, go into a finishing discharge, and then use Soaring Wyvern Blade. But Invincible Gambit can still be a very decent option if the monster is about to hit you and you don't have enough time to pull off a counter, but you still want to keep damage and attacking the monster. Of course, you need to keep an eye on your HP as you do this, because while this move does have armor and go through monster attacks, you will still take damage as you power through them, but at this point I feel like that's standard for the switch axe, so you're probably already used to that. As for choosing between compressed charge and a finisher discharge, I pretty much always stick to the finishing discharge. I'd probably use compressed discharge a lot more often if its animation was 10 to 20% faster. As it is hard to justify using it. It deals less damage than finishing discharge, and because the animation takes so long, it may actually be more dangerous to perform a compressed discharge as opposed to a finishing discharge. That is because in a lot of situations when you perform a finishing discharge, when you go up on a monster, many of the attacks it does will not actually connect with you. So you're not really a sitting duck as you are on the ground when you're performing a compressed discharge. Of course you can still power through some moves with this, but you'll still end up taking plenty of damage, and you still can get hit in the process of finishing your compressed discharge. And even if you get hit during finishing discharge, very rarely will a monster outright card you in that short time span. So you're able to finish the attack and even follow it up with a Soaring Wyvern, and then you just heal up. With compressed discharge, if you don't perform it fast enough, you'll be knocked out of the animation very easily. One neat thing you can do with compressed discharge, which is something that you could actually do in the base game, is use switch charger before you use it. So then the compressed finishing discharge is not going to use up any of your switch gauge, so you can then follow it up with another compressed discharge. This does actually deal a lot of damage doing 2 compressed discharges back to back. However, this combo isn't very reliable, as if the monster isn't KO or paralyzed, you'll probably miss one of the discharges. Plus, you'll deal a lot more damage if you perform a simple regular switch axe combo like so, and follow it up with a finishing discharge, and combo that into a Soaring Wyvern. Of course, if you want to use Soaring Wyvern, you should go with finishing discharge, and vice versa, so if you want to use finishing discharge, you should go with Soaring Wyvern, just because of how powerful this combo is and how easy it is to perform it. In regards to the final switch skill that I've yet to mention here in this video, between having forward slash or forward overhead slash, personally I would say that you should go with overhead slash pretty much every single time. This is because while the overhead slash is slightly slower than the regular forward slash, it will allow you to hit monster parts that you may not be able to reach otherwise. Besides that, the morphing attack goes immediately into a sword double slash. So when compared to the regular forward slash, using overhead slash will result in more damage. A couple of other things to keep in mind is that when it comes to the switch axe, the damage of your file's explosions can be increased through the use of attack boost, and also the file explosions will reduce your sharpness. Which is why in a lot of builds I will be recommending that you max out attack boost, and I would also highly recommend that you put some points into speed sharpening and protective polish. If you want to know more about what I believe to be the very best switch axe builds, then click this video right here. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching. My name is Dark Hero, and as always, happy hunting.